Anthony Simpson walked slowly through the shiny glass doors of the car dealership, carrying the breath of a cold winter afternoon. His appearance was simple, an old faded coat and shoes with frayed edges. He had the composure of a seasoned man, but his deep eyes still shone with a small desire to find a new car, not to show off, but simply to replace the loyal companion that had been with him for nearly a decade. The sparkling lights from the showroom ceiling reflected on the shiny cars, as if inviting. But it was not Anthony, but the young customers, dressed in neat suits and trendy dresses. Anthony was simply a quiet figure, blending into that brilliant space, like a low note in the middle of a splendid symphony. He walked past the rows of cars, his calloused hands gently stroking the surface of a shiny black sedan. It might be a good fit, he muttered to himself, but no one around him heard. His silence was almost invisible, and his presence seemed to be drowned out by the haughty gazes of the busy clerks. Each time he stepped closer, hoping against hope that someone would say hello, his indifference became more apparent. The salesman, well-dressed and lightly perfumed, did not even glance at him. They stood in a huddle, chatting about the more important customers who were coming in, the ones they believed would bring in the big bucks. A young man, David Connell, with a smile as sharp as a knife, glanced at Anthony from a distance. But instead of approaching, he quickly turned away, walking briskly toward a posh couple who had just entered the showroom. Anthony stood there silently, listening to the whispers from the clerks. Just an old man looking at cars. Probably can't afford a tire. The soft, sarcastic laughter rang out through the air like an invisible knife cutting into his heart. Anthony said nothing, nor did he show any indignation. But deep inside, a bitter feeling crept in. He didn't need them to know who he was. He didn't need them to appreciate his worth. But he wondered, is this how they see people? Just based on their clothes, their appearance? Though ignored and despised, Anthony didn't complain. He looked around the dealership, his eyes still gentle as a gentle breeze, but within them contained awareness and a profound lesson. An idea sprouted in his heart, not to retaliate, but to change. Anthony turned and walked out of the dealership, his feet light, but each step deepening the determination in his heart. The glass doors closed behind him, but what had just happened was not the end. It was only the beginning. He did not see the contempt on the faces of those who looked down on him, for his mind was far beyond that. In the fading light, Anthony looked up at the vast sky and said to himself, "Every person has value, and the only thing that needs to change is the way we see each other." A cold wind blew by, but inside him, a warm fire had just been lit. That night, Anthony Simpson sat quietly at the simple wooden table, where the soft yellow light fell on the white papers in front of him. The room was so quiet that he could hear the wind blowing outside the window. But in his mind, ideas were burning, bright as a fire in the middle of a winter night. He did not feel angry, nor did he harbor resentment. Instead, Anthony deeply reflected on what had happened. He did not blame the employees for their arrogance, because he understood that the way they behaved was simply the result of an environment that had taught them to value appearances over the human heart. But Anthony also knew that without change, this place would forever be a symbol of discrimination and indifference. Picking up a pen, Anthony began writing a series of notes, each word etched into the paper, not only with ink, but also with a strong belief that he could make a difference. It was not just a financial plan. but also a vision of an environment where everyone who entered felt valued. Looking out the window, he smiled as he imagined tomorrow. He did not want to retaliate against those who had slighted him. Retaliation would only harden people's hearts. Instead, he wanted to turn today's humiliation into an opportunity for change, not for himself, but for all those who had been looked down upon simply because of their appearance. The phone on the table rang. Anthony picked it up and called a few close friends in the business world. These were not just partners, but also people who had witnessed him overcome countless difficulties to build a career from scratch. Through brief conversations, he conveyed his intention to buy back the car dealership where he had just been humiliated. Everything happened as quickly as a fire in the dark. The legal documents were processed in record time, and before dawn, Anthony had completed all the necessary procedures. This time, he was not just a man entering the dealership as a customer. He was returning as the man in charge of changing the whole place. In the dim light of the morning, Anthony stood up, straightening the old coat that he still treasured as a part of himself. Looking at himself in the small mirror on the wall, he thought to himself, "It is not the appearance that defines a person's worth, but how they act towards the world." With that in mind, he stepped outside, ready for a new day. A day not just to carry out the plan, but to sow the seeds of awakening and compassion in people who had gone astray. This time, Anthony did not bring silence. He brought a determined heart and a great mission to change the way human values are measured. The next morning, the car dealership opened as usual, welcoming the first rays of sunlight through the large glass panels. Inside, the employees were still working with the same familiar attitude. Polite smiles, looking at customers from head to toe. No one knew that today, a huge change would change their entire lives. When Anthony Simpson walked in, still wearing the same old shirt and worn-out shoes, no one paid any attention to him. To them, he was just an ordinary man, the one they had ignored yesterday. But this time, his footsteps were no longer quiet. They were strong, sure, like an undercurrent waiting to explode. The first person to notice Anthony's presence was William James, the dealership manager. He stepped forward, forcing a polite smile. "Good morning, sir," William said, his voice polite but cold. "Is there something you need here today?" Anthony did not answer immediately. He slowly pulled out a neatly folded document from his pocket and placed it on the table in front of William. Without saying a word, he silently observed the expression of the man as he slowly opened the document and read it. William's face, originally full of confidence, gradually turned pale. The words before his eyes were like a bucket of cold water, causing the forced smile to disappear, replaced by shock. This is an acquisition agreement?" William stuttered, not believing his eyes. Anthony stood up straight, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that silenced the entire room. "That's right. As of this morning, I am the new owner of this dealership." A silence fell, like a bell ringing in the vast space. The employees, hearing the announcement, turned to look at each other, uncertainty evident in their eyes. The man they had once looked down on, ignored just because of his appearance, was now the one who held their fate in their hands. William tried to regain his composure, his voice laced with pleading. "There must be some kind of mistake. Mr. Simpson, we can talk it over." Anthony interrupted him, his voice low but loud enough for everyone to hear. "There was no mistake, William. Yesterday, I walked in here as a customer with the simple desire to be treated kindly, but I was ignored, I was disrespected, and you made a big mistake. I'm not back for revenge. I'm back for a change." He turned to the other employees, his eyes scanning each face. "Today, things will be different. This dealership will no longer be a place where customers are judged by their appearance or the amount of money in their wallets. From now on, everyone will be treated with respect and kindness. Two things you have forgotten." Anthony took a deep breath, his eyes softening as he stopped at William. "And to change that, the first thing I need to do is remove the leaders who have allowed this culture to persist. William, you are fired." Surprise swept through the room like a wave. William opened his mouth to protest, but he couldn't form a word. He bowed his head, walking in heavy silence. Anthony continued, his voice low but steady. He called out each employee by name, pointing out the mistakes and attitudes they had shown. Those who had looked down on him, whispered behind his back, or laughed at him, had to pay the price. However, he did not do it out of revenge, but because he wanted to rebuild this place from the ground up, based on the values he believed in. Amid the worried looks, he called out the name of Helen Orla, the only young woman who had greeted him with a warm smile yesterday. "Helen," Anthony said, his voice softer, "you have shown me that kindness has nothing to do with position or seniority. From today, you will be the new floor manager. I trust you will lead this team in the way this place needs you to." Helen's eyes widened in surprise, but a new confidence flickered in them. "I will do my best, sir," she replied, her voice full of determination. Anthony turned to look at the room, his eyes no longer judgmental, but hopeful. "If you stay here, I hope you understand. This place is not what it used to be. We are going to build an agency where everyone feels valued, no matter who they are." The whispering stopped. The people who had once scorned him now stood before him with a mixture of respect and fear. But deep in their eyes, Anthony saw a glimmer of awakening, something he had hoped to inspire since the first day he walked in. In the days that followed, the dealership began to transform, not only in its appearance, but also in the way people worked and treated each other. Anthony Simpson, in his usual calm manner, did not impose rigid rules. He listened, guided, and instilled the core values he had always held dear: respect, kindness, and a sense of the true worth of each person. Helen Orla, now the floor manager, became the center of the transformation. She led the team with an open and sincere spirit, constantly reminding everyone of the importance of welcoming each customer with enthusiasm, regardless of what they looked like or how much they could afford. Under her leadership and Anthony's support, the atmosphere at the dealership became warm and welcoming, like a real family. News of the change at the dealership spread quickly. Customers who once walked through the door and felt ignored now come back, not to retaliate, but to feel the difference. The dealership is no longer a place to brag or compete, but a place where people feel genuine and are treated like friends. Sales have skyrocketed, not just because of the products, but because people feel respected and understood. New hires are all people who share Anthony's vision. They don't just sell cars. They tell the dealership's story, the story of an ordinary man with a simple heart who transformed an entire community with kindness and awareness. Anthony still shows up every day, still in the same old shirt, still quiet. But now he is no longer looked down upon. He doesn't need the spotlight or the recognition. He just needs to know that this place has become part of something better. One afternoon, as Anthony was walking around the showroom, Helen walked up to him, a big smile on her face. "Mr. Simpson, I want to thank you for giving me a chance. Things have changed a lot, and I never thought I could do this." Anthony smiled, his eyes filled with tenderness and pride. "You've always had that ability, Helen. I just see what others don't see. Most importantly, you lead this team with your heart." Looking around, Anthony saw that the space he had once entered with frustration was now filled with life and positive energy. Everyone, from employees to customers, seemed to be inspired by this change. He had not only created a successful car dealership, but also a place where people learned to treat each other well and to see the value inside instead of the outer shell. Anthony turned and walked out of the showroom into the evening light, feeling relieved as if he had just accomplished a great mission. The sky above was still a vast, deep blue, reminding him that there was always room for change in this world. All it took was a heart willing to begin. Anthony Simpson's story is not just a journey to change a car dealership, but also a profound reminder of the value of kindness and humility. In a world where appearances easily become a measure of judgment, Anthony has proven that true value lies in the heart and how we treat others. He did not seek revenge, but chose to sow the seeds of awakening, to turn a cold place into a home filled with humanity. We, in our daily lives, can also become our own Anthony Simpson. Let's treat people around us with kindness, respect, and love, no matter what they look like or where they come from. Every small action, every warm word has the power to create great change. Thank you for listening and accompanying this story. If it touches your heart, please like to spread the positive energy, share to make this story more widely known, and comment on your favorite inspirational quote. Together, we can build a world where kindness is the common language of all.